Good afternoon, and welcome to your RAN Live 147th broadcast. Today, I'm coming live to you with a very special guest coming all the way from London, UK, Alina Addison, and I'm very honored to have her on the show today on emotional intelligence. Before I can get Alina on board, let me just introduce her to the audience that we have today. So, a qualified chartered accountant and former managing director and head of trading at a prestigious global financial institution in London. Alina Addison gained over 20 years of frontline business and leadership experience. She founded her own coaching and leadership development company, Adaptaa Ltd, in 2016, driven by a personal commitment to study positive psychology and achieve sustained positive change and success for her own family post a life-changing event. Alina is an active member of key networking organizations, including ICAEW, Every Woman, and Adelaide Group. In her spare time, she is a board advisor and fundraiser for her chosen children's charities, Humanitas, Autistica, and Hospice for Hope. I hope I'm pronouncing these
Hospices
correct.
of Hope, that's right, yes.
Thank you, Alina. As well as remotely managing a small hotel she built in Transylvania in 2004. And by the way, if somebody didn't know that, it's in Bran, the city. It's a historical city in Romania. Situated in the historical and beautiful city of Bran, and here we go, Romania, Alina is the proud founder and owner of a small successful hotel, as I was saying, Transylvanian Inn, which her family built over 3 years. Transylvanian Inn has been operational since 2005, and Alina has managed it remotely from her home in the UK with the help of her family and local staff. An organizer and facilitator for extra mile retreats for audacious leaders, Alina has developed numerous workshops on various topics, including leading with emotional intelligence, working with strengths, outsmarting stress, and managing your personal brand. Today, Anila's work focuses on applied positive psychology and neuroscience in the workplace and developing core emotional intelligence competencies for leadership success. Her latest project is in the co-creation of a game-changing community of A leaders who have become masterful in leading with great minds, big hearts, and infinite mindsets. So please welcome Alina Addison with me. Good afternoon. Hi, Alina.
Thank you, Joran, for that wonderful introduction.
You're most welcome, and I'm really pleased to have you on the show today. So, Alina, I do understand that your origins are from Romania, and today you're in London, UK. So, can you give us a short sum up of about this journey of you from Romania to the UK today?
Sure, no, thank you. And I'm very excited actually to sort of be even, well, remotely and virtually back in Bucharest today. Well, I suppose what most people will know about me is as I did grow up in Bucharest, that's where I grew up. I went to, it's the Liceul Pedagogic. I'm assuming that you've got a few Romanian speakers on your broadcast.
Absolutely, I do. Yes, I'm sure.
In Drumul Tabre, this is where I grew up. And then I went to university there in, the ASE, the Academy of Economic Studies, I suppose in English. And then I had this opportunity, amazing opportunity to come and study in the UK. So I studied, I did 2 years in one. My final year in Bucharest was with the first year in Liverpool. Then I ended up with 2 degrees. One was in international relations, one was in business studies.
Mm-hmm.
And as if I didn't have enough studying, I sort of decided to study even more. So I studied for 3 years more as a chartered accountant with PwC. And then I transitioned into investment banking. So I ended up an investment banker.
I see.
Years, and I became, by I suppose what most people would say traditionally, a very successful investment banker by traditional measurements. So I was the head of trading, as you said, the head of execution with them in London. So I was always based in London. So once I came to study, I stayed here, which is over 26 years ago. And, Yes, I then transitioned. So as a head of trading, I suppose I became a MD. As you said, it's a managing director, which is a very sort of prestigious job title to have. And I was the only one, I'm told, that was ever promoted to that position when I was working 4 days a week. And there's a reason for that, which I'm happy to tell you later. But
Yeah.
then 4 years later, as you said, I transitioned into doing what I'm doing today, which is executive coaching. So that's what I do. I coach leaders and aspiring leaders, mainly in the financial services industry, because it was easier for me to go back there.
I see.
My sort of third career, as I call it.
Yeah.
So, to date, anyway, for now.
Okay, so the very interesting part for me is how is that you transition from having, let's say, a corporate job, right, a managing director for a company, and you transitioned it to becoming an executive coach. What caused the transition here?
Yes, I suppose what I've told you is what most people know about me. What I haven't told you is what most people don't know about me. So, I've sort of transitioned and yeah, that transition, I always say it's been the catalyst for change, let's call it that way. It's been my own son, Dan, who's now 16. But the inspiration for change has been my own executive coach, someone called John Smith. So he truly was my inspiration as I worked with him while I was a banker, and I watched him as he was a very successful and, sort of subconsciously, as I said, it was something inspiring to. And what I do today, actually, I mean, that's the other thing. So apart from I do work with leaders and aspiring leaders to achieve high performance, that's why I say, but I do it through one crucial skill, which you alluded to. So it's that sort of skill that makes the difference between a boss, between a struggling parent and one that, who enjoys a satisfying family life. And is that sort of one skill that makes, again, sort of the difference between being able to have relationship with even the most difficult people. And that skill that I'm talking about is emotional intelligence, which most people call it as a soft skill.
Right.
Actually, I think it's a very hard skill to have. And the reason is my son was diagnosed with high-functioning autism. So I was getting there. So getting into there is 7 years ago now. And I call it, it's an extreme form of low emotional intelligence. That's how I define it.
Okay, so sorry, so what happened, and this is what I also wanted to ask you. So what really happened with your son is what caused the life-changing event of changing into life coaching, or was this before, or was it after?
No, it was before. So it was part of it. The life-changing event, much bigger than that, which I won't go into. That is a much bigger event that it is the theme, the subject of a book that hopefully will come and at some point in my life. But that's big, that it's not something that, we can talk yet, maybe one day.
Definitely.
But
it's good to hear.
It's in that mix. Yes, so my son was diagnosed while I was still a banker. And that's when I went and self-study positive psychology, neuroscience, that I came across this emotional intelligence. Because I suppose in that story, say, I was the head of trading, which meant that I could negotiate with almost anybody.
Wow.
The one person I could not negotiate with was my own son. And that was so true. And I didn't know why.
Sorry.
Before he was diagnosed. So, and I always say through that journey of learning many things, but one is actually empathy. So I don't know how big my empathy was before I learned about it. But all I can tell you is that it made a big difference between me not being able to connect with him or communicate with him to having, well, I would say an amazing relationship with him today.
I'm very grateful for you to share that with us on the air, on the broadcast as well, Alina. Thank you so much. I see you mentioned that you are working on applied positive psychology and neuroscience. So when you say positive psychology, was that also something that you learned together with your son through his situation?
It was actually, that was sort of afterwards as part of this coaching training that I did. So I mean, many different fields of psychology, but the positive psychology, which is, it's a new field of psychology, let's call it, for the last 25 to 30 years, is they look at what works you know,
Right.
historically, psychology is they try to fix people. They look at what's wrong and they try to fix it. The positive psychology says, well, actually, let's forget about that. Let's look at what works. Let's look at strengths and then multiply those, because you're much more likely to get somewhere by looking at the positive. So that's
Okay.
the difference.
Okay. So just getting a little off track, but retaining to the story that you have written down, how did your family and you decide in investing and taking care of a hotel, Transylvanian, in the historical city of Bran in Romania? How did that come about?
Oh, God, that was such a...
I just find it very interesting that, wow, you left, but you still came back to Bran. Was there any kind of a connection in for that city, or?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't even know Bran that well, but so it was my, my husband. So I had no, it wasn't really my idea, so I can't take any credit for that, to be honest.
Okay.
But it, you know, it was effectively, so that was really in 2000 or 2001. So I joined, I suppose I could talk about it because everybody can go and Google. So the bank that I joined was Rothschild. I joined them in 2001. As a banker, you get bonuses every year.
I'm sure.
and that first year was literally, we had this small amount of money and we said, what we'll do, let's just do something with it, a bit more meaningful. And we said, well, maybe we'll just build a holiday home. It's as simple as that. So it was a conversation over the dinner table. Let's do a holiday home. And that was my dad, my family, husband, and they had a few beers, and this holiday home became a potential hotel. And I still remember my dad at the time saying, Alina, what do you want a holiday home? How many times will you come back? To clean the web, you know, the spider webs.
Spider webs, yeah, clean the furniture.
And actually we said, well, maybe do something more meaningful, something that is actually produce something, create something. So that conversation became, okay, well, why not? And that tells you a lot about, you know, the sort of optimism and the opportunity. A big part of the optimistic brain is the why not in a positive way.
Before we go into today's topic, what would you say to anyone that is not in Romania to come visit? What would be that one positive point that you would put forward for them to come visit Romania, when, of course, the sky is open much wider than today as we have it?
Well, I love Romania. I would say that because it's you know, very nostalgic. That's where I grew up. I think it's a beautiful country. It's got beautiful people. It's got so much hidden gem, undiscovered gems. And yeah, I think, I mean, I remember I wrote probably a few years ago, I think there was an article here in Financial Times, which is the most prestigious financial newspaper in the UK, and they called Transylvania the Tuscany of the East.
Okay.
And they're sort of encouraging people to just go and visit that part, which is, I remember someone said who did come to Bran, to the hotel. And I mean, the hotel is a small hotel, but it's got magnificent views over Dracula Castle. And one of the clients said to me at the time, oh my God, Alina, you know, this is more beautiful than Switzerland. And I've never been to Switzerland, so I couldn't really testify that was the case, but I was so curious. So it was only about 3 or 4 years ago, I took my kids to Switzerland just to make sure that was the case. And I can absolutely testify that it is better than Switzerland. Not that I mean, Switzerland is absolutely beautiful, but it's not better, but it is equally
beautiful. Yeah, I'm a living proof that I'm in Romania for the past 6 years, and I totally second what Alina is saying. It is a beautiful country. Bran is absolutely a beautiful city that you must visit. One of the best cities that you must see on your list. So I'm with Alina Addison today morning or today afternoon on the broadcast for Your RAN Alive. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, any queries that you would like to put forward to Alina, please feel free to write into the broadcast from my page, Your RAN Alive, and we'll take those questions up. So Alina, we're talking today about emotional intelligence, and with everything that you have done today, how is that we came to choose emotional intelligence as the topic?
As a topic, yeah. So I came across emotional intelligence, as I said, as I was embarking in this new journey of my life, which was coaching. So I decided that I was going to to go into coaching, I sort of gave myself 2 years, as always with these things, when you go into a new venture as an entrepreneur and see if you sort of make it. But yes, emotional intelligence for me was very much grounded into, if I can understand it and I can apply it in my own life, I can see the results, then obviously I can do it out there. So as I said, through this journey, through learning what this thing is all about, is I taught myself, because that's where you have to start, then applied it with my son. And I always say he's truly the biggest testimony to date as what can be achieved and what we can do with patience, with commitment. And yeah, I've only through that journey, not only has he actually learned to self-manage better, to to really understand some of those challenges, communication, but through that, I've also become a better parent, a better leader myself. So yeah, that's how it all started. It's really just applying some of those, very, I would say very simple, but very, very difficult little tools to apply in practice.
I understand. Now, before we get into the different muscles, as you call it, for emotional intelligence, you said that some of the tools are difficult. What would you say that is, and why?
Because actually talking about is, we all understand at a very cognitive level, as I said, that our brain is. So I'll give you a very simple example. We all know that smoking is not good for us. Just because we know it, it doesn't mean that actually we are able to then apply it. So it's the practice of, or the say, sometimes I say, we all know that healthy food and it's important for us, but that doesn't actually stop us from eating unhealthy food. So just because we know it, it's not sufficient. And that's what I mean when I'm saying it is, sometimes it's really difficult. That gap between knowing and applying, it can be vast.
I see. Okay. Are you with me?
Yes.
Ah, okay. So I was trying to understand. Okay, so I get that it's a big separation there, but why would it be difficult for one to adapt to it? Would that be the right question, or difficult to get there?
Like anything, I mean, it's not, it is, everything is difficult. I mean, any new skill, I always say if anybody tells us that it's easy, don't believe them. It's simple, but it's not easy. So it's understanding. Most people don't know what emotional intelligence is. Most people think emotional intelligence is possibly today empathy. I think that when more people do understand at a high level that its emotions are important. It is about the emotional brain, and it is about how do you listen to those, because emotions are just signals to our brain, signals to our body that we need to change something.
Okay. Let's have a look at what would these 10 muscles of emotional intelligence are. Would you want to elaborate on them?
Yeah, happy. So for everybody who just a little bit of history. So emotional intelligence, as we know it today, I suppose was developed by Daniel Goleman, 26 years ago. In terms of, he wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, and then a few years later, Working with Emotional Intelligence. And there was this concept was developed before him. So he wasn't the one that invented it, if you like, but he truly coined the term as we know it today. And then from there on, there's been many, a lot of research. I think there's been more than 100, serious research.
Yeah.
On more and more. Now, I have chosen, I have studied, Goleman model. I have studied Bar-On model, which was the one before him. It's a well-being model. It's called the Emotional Intelligence, or EQ 2.0. So all of that. So I went and learned about all of those, but then I came across this other model, which is called Emotional Capital. It's Roche Martin. It's Martin Newman. So that's my model of choice. So what I wanted to explain to the audience is I am not here to say one is better than the other. There are many. That's the one that I chose. But there are other ones out there, for people to understand as to, this is when I'm saying a model, it's called in our coaching terms a psychometric. So what does that mean? That means that if you, Joran, want to find out how is my emotional intelligence, can I test it? So you can.
Okay.
Doing this test, it's a questionnaire. So, you know, as people go and test their IQ, you can then, now there's been models, you can go and test your EQ. So
Right. Mm-hmm.
IQ score, you know, you've got it, you know, up to 140, you can do exactly the same. So when I'm talking about the 10 muscles,
Mm-hmm.
there are literally 10 competencies. Okay. I mean, that muscles is my term because it's easier to explain.
Definitely.
If I can explain it to my children and they understand, then everybody will. So, you know, the 10 competencies is what this model is made up of. I call them muscles because the whole theory of emotional intelligence is you can develop it, you can stretch it, you can improve it. Whereas IQ, there is a lot out there which says that by the time we're about 17, it's sort of fixed.
I see.
By the time we're about 21, personality is also fixed. We're either extroverts, we're introverts. We can't do much about it. Emotional intelligence, on the other hand, we can.
Okay, so you're saying, so what I understand is you're not born extrovert or born introvert. It's something that shapes up until a certain age, and that is also the same with your IQ, I suppose.
Yes.
Okay. I like the fact that you're using the term muscle, because I think even as a brain, I mean, until you don't use it or you're not using a certain muscle, it gets weak. It doesn't give you the output that you're looking for. So I totally like the term muscle that you're using for the competencies instead.
Yes, and actually, I think that's the thing. It's always, and I use empathy as an example. For example, you know, empathy is a muscle, and in the financial services industry that I know so intimately is not because people don't have empathy necessarily. They might have a lot of empathy as they go into this, but it's not valued. And when it's not valued, you don't use it, and when you don't use it, a muscle atrophies.
Yeah, so it gets weak.
Exactly.
I have Camelia Trashka that is writing in and saying, adapting your mind to your emotions. Is that what you call emotional intelligence?
Well, it's actually the other way around, I suppose. It's always with things because you don't adapt your mind to your emotions. I suppose it's responding. So the brain just understanding how to respond to those emotions. So the simple definition of emotional intelligence by Goleman is actually this ability to listen and then manage your emotions. So most people don't know what the emotions are. And interestingly, when I ask people how many, you know, there are sort of 7 basic emotions in life, and then feelings. In English language, they said that, you know, about 3,000 feelings words. And there is a small distinction between that. But most people only use about, you know, maximum, the very masterful of us, probably 30.
Yeah.
People use less than 10. You know, when you ask them, how are you? How are you feeling? And they'll say, good.
Yeah.
Bad. Oh, not so bad. Or how are you feeling? Sad.
A very limited number of vocabulary,
limited.
I suppose.
Yes.
I understand. Okay.
And actually going a little bit deeper. So actually, when I'm angry, is it really that I'm angry, or what is it behind that? Is it, you know, is it frustration? Is it fear? You know, am I terrified of something? Am I ashamed of something? So it's deeper than that. And when you understand the cause, it's certainly easier to then adapt, as Camelia said, you know, in terms of what is it that we need to adapt to.
Okay, fantastic. So Camelia, thanks for asking that question. Anybody else that would like to write in something to Alina Addison, now's the moment. You can write it on the live broadcast through the chat from my page, You Ran Alive, and you can catch her giving your reply. Just in case we are not able to see the question right now, I will see that the question reaches Alina a little later. After the live, the video will stay on the page as well on Your Ran Alive, so you can definitely come in and write in a question a little later as well. So Alina, I think I see that I have another question that has come up. I was just going to ask you, maybe before we take this question up, what are these 10 muscles? Would you want to tell us, or should I take up the next question?
I'm happy either way. Well, let me quickly, because maybe that
definitely
someone else to ask another question. So 10, as I said, so Goleman had 12.
Right.
Martin Newman has got 10, and they are, the reason why I chose them is because they are much more applicable, let's say, to leadership. That's his argument. They are much more as to the sort of 10 muscles that if you wanted to become a successful, great leader rather than a good leader, that's what you should really aspire to improve, let's say. So, and he's using 3 focuses. So so he splits this 10 into 3 pillars. And the first pillar is called inner focus, which is the ability to deal with self, with our muscles within self. The second pillar is the other focus, which is the ability to deal with others, the people out there.
Okay.
And then the last, third pillar is called outer focus, which then is the ability to deal with change or the environment. So that's a distinction between the 3 pillars. And then you have 4 muscles under the inner focus. And those 4 muscles are self-knowing, self, okay? So it's
yes.
Self,
know yourself.
Exactly, knowing yourself, knowing how your emotions impact you and others. You self-confidence, you know, how confident are you in your own abilities, your self-worth.
Yeah, speaks for itself.
Reliance.
Self-reliance.
Which is the ability to make decisions, to be autonomous, to be independent. How much can you rely on yourself? Finally is the self-control. So again, that's probably it's one with the closest to my heart, because this is where my son has to do a lot of work, is that ability to not get frustrated easily, that ability to self-regulate your emotions and don't explode. So
right.
That's called the stress anger muscle. The other focus, so the second pillar, you've got empathy, because it's how do you connect to other people. You then have relationship skills. So again, you connect at a sort of deeper level. And then I'm just going to have to remind and then straightforwardness. So that's the other thing. Straightforwardness is what I call the communication muscle. So how straightforwardly can you communicate with other people? So that's the sort of the muscles under the other. And the outer focus, you have adaptability. So how do you adapt to change? How do you adapt to the environment? You have optimism. Again, your ability to really sense opportunities and have a positive mood. And then the very last one, the number 10, which comes under the outer focus, is called self-actualization. And that's probably the one that confuses people most, because it starts with self. And they always ask me, Alina, but why is that outer and not inner? Why is that not about me?
Okay.
I always say, just
a good question there.
Take the self out, but that's what sort of Maslow said, you know, years and years, hundreds of years back, but it's self-actualization, but it's what I call the energy muscle. How do you relate to the environment or to sort of change in terms of how much energy do you take from the environment? What's the standards that, you know, how willing are you to be challenged by the outside world? So why that particular passion as well, work-life balance, it's in there. So, so these are the 10 muscles.
Okay, I appreciate that. We will recap that in a while, because even I might find it a little difficult to remember all of them. Tatiana has written in, Polyakova, do you think some people struggle with empathy as they do not have much empathy for themselves? How do you think empathy and self-empathy is related, if at all?
Thank you, Tatiana, for that question. Absolutely, and it is a very, very valid question, because that's true. It's very hard to have empathy for someone else until you start with the self-empathy for yourself. And a lot of people who are not able to have that empathy for self, they struggle. So and people who don't have the empathy for self, they tend to be very self-critical, what I say. So they always on selves. So they do need to learn to be, what I say, forgiving. You know, if you don't forgive yourself, it's much more difficult to forgive others. So.
Oh, okay. So that would be an example of self-empathy, to be able to forgive yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, so I think empathy is a really, really deep, because empathy comes from curiosity, from the ability to listen. and at its absolute basic level. And then it's about sensing. So can you feel what someone else is feeling? And then can you also sense what they need? So it's about, are you able to really sense their needs? That's
Right.
what it is. And if you're struggling with knowing what your own needs are, so I know it's a very complex
Yeah.
in a way. As I said, it's simple, but it's not easy. So you need to do a lot of work. So when you see someone actually, and I think it's a very valid question, but it's probably one that does need a lot more in depth, because when you see someone who
Understanding.
possibly you say, well, you see them and say they're not empathetic, and in a jargon, what we say about people who are not empathetic, we call them selfish. That's what I do. And always,
Okay.
my son as an example, he could have very, very little or very much is the extreme, but
Right.
it crosses selfish. It's just very self-centered, but it's because he doesn't sometimes understand his own
His
needs.
own emotions, his own standing. I understand. Alina, recently I lost my father a couple of months ago in June. And they say you never know the loss until it happens to you, right? So over a period of time, it's life. You're born, and at a certain point you have to leave the world, right? And you tend to empathize with somebody else. You tend to say, I'm sorry to hear this news. I give you my heartfelt condolences. I'm using this example because I think I can relate to it in a way. So you don't really feel the same way as the person feels, the one that has lost that person. So when do you know that you are empathetic enough towards somebody else? Am I making sense with this question?
You're making a lot of sense, and thank you for sharing that. And I will say, I'm really sorry about your deep loss, but actually so very
Thank
true,
you.
because it's very difficult to walk in someone else's shoes until and unless we have actually walked. And it is I always say about coaches, it's interesting, this is my own, is a coach cannot actually take you somewhere where they haven't been themselves. So it's a big statement to make, but actually, unless because we understand it at the cognitive level. So I understand your loss, but actually I cannot dare to pretend that I truly sense your loss in the way that I would if, touch wood, that would have happened to me.
God forbid. Yep.
I can say that with conviction, because I have got, as I said, it's very difficult for someone to understand what it means to have a special child. They could sort of pretend, but I know they don't. And so I can relate a lot more to people in my situation.
Right.
And I think my empathy has gone or has increased because of that. So I'm more tolerant. Empathy is tolerance.
Right.
With other people in similar situations, not exact situations, about difference, about love, about frustrations, about challenges, about setbacks, about many of those things that life, what I do know now, will throw our way no matter what. And it's how we deal with them.
Okay.
So yeah.
Sorry, Alina. So Maria Christina is asking, where can I find the test? I suppose we mentioned a particular test that you can take on emotional intelligence. Is there a link that I can look up and I can post it on the broadcast for the people to get a reference to?
Yes, I mean, I think that the thing with emotional intelligence is you do need to find an accredited coach. I mean, you could do, but all of this do the proper validated models have a cost. So you need to invest in it, and you need to find a coach who is accredited to then interpret it for you. I don't know whether there are some where you do it for free online. I'm sure. I'd have no idea how good they are. They might give you an idea. I'm sure they probably are if you do emotional intelligence. This particular one, you need to, I mean, I'm happy for anybody to come and reach out to me, and I can tell them where. Just look Roche Martin, which is the company that I use. I think you could do one with them. If you wanted a proper one, though, you should. I think because they sometimes, you know, said they come to me, you do need to have someone who can interpret it for you.
I totally get you. I mean, there must be so many tests and stuff that is online, but probably it is just to give you that positive feedback or make you feel good about yourself. But if you really, what you're trying to say, if you really want an in-depth understanding of your standing on emotional intelligence, you need to do it with a professional.
You
If
do,
that's
and it's
correct.
quite
Okay.
dangerous because I've done hundreds of them with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And actually is a lot of them, you could have a very high score, let's say in some
Mm-hmm.
you have a very low score, and that's not going to do much to your self-esteem if you have
Okay.
a very low score in empathy, let's say, or self-control. So, and
Mm-hmm.
if you don't really know, you know, what do you do with that? What does that really mean?
Okay. So we have a lot of questions coming in, so I think we will take those because that would also get them engaged with us. First of all, Camelia gets back with a reply agreeing to what you're saying, what we said earlier. Most of us are responding how we are, and that we are okay when you're asking how we are feeling, and that's it. um, they don't really have a particular term for that moment of how they're feeling. So Camelia, thanks for writing that in. Tatiana has another question, and she says, how can we improve our emotional intelligence and develop those muscles? Do you work on it yourself or with help of others? So does one work on himself on them, or uh, does one definitely need a professional guidance like you?
Ooh, you know, I will say my default response will be
Mm-hmm.
with others, but both. Okay, so I'm not here to pretend that, but I will always say, because that's where most people find it really difficult to ask for help. So and actually, again, I mean it when I say to people, if anybody knows about coaching and how coaching works,
Mm-hmm.
choose a coach. Make sure you ask one question: does your coach have a coach?
Okay.
You know, if they're not prepared to invest in their own personal development, then why should you invest in them? So
Mm-hmm.
I suppose, you know, my answer would be, of course, always best, because the journey is faster. It's probably more meaningful if you had someone to help you along the way who knew how to shape it for you. So of course you do, but you know, I read so many self books, and I'm not saying I learned a lot from that, but there is no difference between working with someone. And yeah, so I'm a big fan of investment in yourself, and I haven't stopped doing it for, well, certainly the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it also gives you the encouragement that, okay, there is someone that is helping you take the next step and move ahead. So yeah, that kind of totally makes sense. I have Mircea Anton, which is asking, where were the 10 pillars from again? So he was
Okay, so
wanting to know
I
the
don't know
source.
if people can see. So the 10 people, I don't know if they can they see me here?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so this is a guy,
Emotional capitalist.
so it's Martin Newman is the model that I use. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm sort of caveating it. It's, I mean, you can buy this book, and you can go onto the sort of Roche Martin site,
Website.
and it is the one I use. So
Mm-hmm.
in case people are sort of listening, there are many more, but that's the simple, and that's the one I use.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alina. Mircea, I hope that answers your question. If you have another question, or the question was not answered to what you were expecting, please reframe your question once again and put it down on the chat, and we'll take it up. I have Carmen asking in, so excited to see you, Alina Addison. A lot of us struggle to connect with our own emotions. What do you recommend for a deep connecting with our own emotions and then the emotions of others?
Ooh, how long do we have, Carmen? But thank you for that. Well, I would say, you know, very simply, and because my brain is very pragmatic and very practical, the first thing that I recommend to my clients to do is actually learn the emotional language. So I give them a piece of paper, which got, you know, probably about 20, 30 words to learn them first. Because as I said, we've got sort of seven emotions, which are, you've got fear, you've got anger, you've got disgust, actually, you've got shame. And then, so we've got 5 sort of negative, and then we've got 2 positive, and the 2 positives are excitement, joy, and then we have love and trust. So you could see that even the way the brain was wired since how many, you know, millions of years, is that we are wired for survival. So we would always look, we're sort of based in fear. So, and then under those, each of them and every one of those, you have other words, such as I said, unfulfilled, frustrated, you know, ashamed. So then if you know a few more words, if you've got them to your arsenal, then it's sort of easier when you stop and you feel something. You think, okay, what could this one be? So that would be the first
I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
what could this one be? Is this cause? I felt really frustrated, and I get this trigger. I always say we always get a chemical reaction in our body anyway, whether it's good or bad. And the extreme emotions are the best ones because we all have, well, hopefully all of us would have experienced love at one point or another. And you know how powerful that emotion is. And I always say, I'm sure at the beginning of a relationship, that makes me always smile is, you ask your partner to take the bin out and they do it very gracefully. You ask them again in a couple of years' time and they say, who do you think I am? So we sort of the emotion.
Right.
But yeah, so I think it's sort of knowing. And then I suppose deeper to I don't know if to really get to know your emotions is having this ability to really stop and listen and meditate, which I found it really difficult personally. It's a long time to go down that road of really, meditating and just listening, letting my mind quieten down, constantly sprinting. So that's a sort of two simple ways, if you like, learn the emotions, and then there are many apps, or try to do a bit more meditation to connect to your emotions.
Right. I suppose if she was wanting to take the next step, which is and the emotions of others, as she says, so I suppose she would need to be a little more extrovert, if I'm not making a mistake, in order to actually get to know and actually get to feel and understand the other human in front of her.
Well, actually, I'm going to challenge you very softly as a coach. I'm a challenging coach, which I say.
Please, this is fun. Go on.
I challenge to support. No, extrovert and introvert's got nothing to do with it. And actually and I'm an extrovert, but some of the introverted coaches are deeper because, the introverts are more able to sit and listen. So the extrovert introvert is more, and its personality, it's not emotional intelligence, but the extrovert is someone who takes the energy from others.
Right.
So you will see the extrovert like me will need to go to parties. So when I'm really down, I need to go to a party. I need to speak to people. I will always sit next to someone on the plane, to sit on my own because I like to talk and I like to communicate.
Right.
Will do the opposite. They'll go to a party and then they will then want a corner because they're taking the energy themselves.
Yeah.
But knowing the emotion, to understand someone else's emotions, is you have to truly listen.
Which means you need to meet, or you need to be open to have that communication, conversation, interaction with that person.
Yes, or
okay, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
or purely just listen. I mean, this is listening is one of the most understated skills, and to properly listen, like active listening, there are not many people who are able to do that. Where you are listening, so I'm listening to you, and then I'm listening to what you are saying, and I'm also listening to what you're not saying. Oh, that is a skill.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Like they say, don't how do they say, don't listen to reply, listen to understand. I think that does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of my favorite quotes. Yeah. So actually what most people do, they listen to you and then, they already made the intention to reply.
Yeah.
Not listening.
You're not listening to exactly what you have to say. Okay, so Carmen, I hope that was insightful and helpful to you. Feel free to write in another question or reframe your question to something more specific, and we'll definitely take it up. Tatiana is saying, thank you, Alina Addison. It is so important to understand our own needs and be forgiving to self, and then relate it to others through commonality of our experiences, fears, and joys. Our direct experiences are not the same, but we are similar, but we all similar, but I suppose she's trying to say we are all similar with fears, joys, and sadness, even though expressed differently. I am wondering how we can develop those skills. I'm not sure if we touched on this. Oh, I think we did.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think if I want to sort of recap for that, then thank you, Tatiana, is yes, I mean, our experience are different. And I think as you and I were talking about, you had your loss, you know, and I might have a different one. So they are different experience. However, we're all, you know, going through fear, and we're all going through sadness or joy. So the reality of our experience. So we could relate to each other in terms of we have experienced loss in different ways. And then start from there. And yeah, Tatiana is right. Sometimes we just really have to go to basics. Okay, how does it actually feel to be joyful? You know,
Okay.
how does it feel to and have that type of conversation?
Okay. So Tatiana, I hope we managed, or Alina has taken up that question to or done justice with it, but definitely keep asking another question if there is anything on your mind. Anybody else? I'm with Alina Addison from the US. She is an executive
Not
coach
US.
and from the UK. I apologize.
Next year, I'm going to challenge you. Maybe I'll do it from US. For you.
I was just wanting to see if you're listening to me. I'm kidding.
Good, yes.
My
Yes.
apologies, Alina. So Alina Addison from the UK, London, UK. London is calling, as we say, an executive coach and entrepreneur, and we're talking about emotional intelligence. So if you have any questions, any queries that are holding inside you, let them out. Ask Alina on the chat from You Ran Alive. Alina, let's go a little ahead, and we were wanting, or I was wanting to know about one of the emotions that we would want to concentrate is optimism, which I think is absolutely necessary in today's time. How does one stay focused with this quality?
Well, optimism is a learned skill. So I'm going to start with that because, and all of these competencies are learned skills. So that's the absolute foundation and the basic for everybody to understand on your call, that all of these things we can develop if we choose to. So it's not one. And optimism is, again, in the model that I use, all of these muscles or all of these competencies have got 3 dimensions. So you can dissect, which is what again, is my language, but you know, all of these muscles, we can dissect them in sort of small little pieces.
Okay.
Optimism, we can dissect into 3 subcomponents. One is opportunity sensing. The second one is positive mood. And the third one is resilience. So if someone wants to improve optimism, they have to look at those 3. Sometimes we are better at one and not the others. So, and you could sort of have a look at what makes up these things. But in a nutshell, opportunity sensing. So someone who is high in optimism, they will look at most things as an opportunity. If you are an extreme optimism, and as I get on that, as I have a top score, 130 out of 130, I see. I have no, but you know, there is good and bad. As always, I say to everybody, there is, you know, don't always assume, because any light comes with a shadow.
Okay.
You know, and I always say the brightest lights have got probably the darkest shadows. So, you know, something like this where everything is an opportunity. That's quite exhausting for someone, because, you know, you do go for, in life, you go for everything like an opportunity. So like this, me being here with you. Okay, so it is interesting. We only just met. So I said yes to this as an opportunity.
But why would that be exhausting?
Because you say yes to every single opportunity that life throws you. And sometimes you can't cope with so many opportunities. Yeah, so if I say yes to, okay, I'm going to go and speak to Joran today at 10, and I'm going to speak to someone else at 12, and I'm going to do my work. And this is what I've done this week, by the way. Sometimes you could just, and I don't want, but I'm challenging myself in this. So you could just sprint through life. So and sometimes we're talking about this. Sometimes it's nice to stop. And, you know, life is not a sprint, could be a marathon. And sometimes it's good not to, you know, just to take stock.
Take a break.
Take a break. So, but I think that's just to explain to the audience as to, you know, opportunity sensing is, do you see something as an opportunity, or do you see it as an obstacle, or well, it's too difficult? You know, I could have said, God, I've never done anything on Facebook, which I didn't, and I was actually terrified. So I'm going to share that with the audience. So I felt, how is that going to? But then my optimistic brain went, well, who cares? This is a nice conversation with you. I'm sure you'll take care of it. I don't have to worry about the rest. But someone who had less of that, all they will think about is, oh, how am I, I've never done it. How is that going to work? And so it's always reasons not to
do it. You'll see all the obstacles instead of all the opportunities. Right. I kind of get you there. Maria over here is saying, Alina, trusting in your gut is part of emotional intelligence.
Well, it is and it isn't, actually, and I don't want to be sort of provocative here, just to not answer, Maria. But it is to some extent. This ability to listen to gut comes with knowing ourselves, with a sort of self-discovery. So it is, and I do a lot of work with my team in with what I said, leading with the mind, which is what most people do, because we are, rational, the IQ, and then you go leading with the heart and leading with the gut. When you align those three, magic really does happen. But you do need to understand a lot of the emotions in order to then access them. And my team does say to me, I always say it feels right. Don't ask me why, it just feels right. So I do listen to the gut. If they ask me to rationalize and give them all of the logical arguments, I can't come up with them. But no, a lot of people who just stay in their heads, if that makes sense, they can't access the rest. They can't access the heart and the gut, actually. And now you do learn, and it is part of the emotion, but emotional intelligence is one bit. There are other ways. I don't want to say the emotional intelligence is the know-it-all and it gives you a magical answer, because it's not. It's a one framework. There are other type of frameworks that you could work to access your gut.
Okay, so basically, Alina, for every person, maybe it's a different methodology that would work. For some, it's emotional intelligence, and maybe for some, emotional intelligence might not really be the way. Would that be right of me to say this?
Yes, I think so. I think because, I do think
I totally agree. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so many different ways as we can use the language to describe something. We don't necessarily have to call it emotional intelligence.
Right. I mean, if one, like, just as there are different people and they like different things to eat or even pursue a different career, so is a path. You have to see what you are adaptable to and what you excel at, or what you think is getting the good out of you. So yeah, that was a good point. I totally understand. I totally get it. Carmen Balaciano is writing again. She says, thank you, Alina. It's fascinating. I loved what you said about active listening and truly opening the heart to feel the other person. What should we do when we sense fear in the other person? How should we handle it?
Ooh, she's challenging me, Carmen. Thank you. When you sense fear, actually, I mean, this is where you need to do a lot of work on your own self, because, and it's interesting because it's taking me into, the other dimension of optimism was a positive mood, and the very last one was resilience. But in terms of the positive mood, there is a lot of research which says that our emotions are contagious. So if I'm really optimistic and I'm really enthusiastic and I'm going to contaminate you, Joran, and then we're going to stay in that type of energy. If I come really depressed and really low, and that, because I had a really bad day, you will sense that.
Right.
Even, so there is the energy that flows even virtually. So if you sense fear, so if I as a coach, I sense you come to me and then I sense you in a fearful zone, I need to acknowledge it. So, but again, that does take a lot of work. Not many people can handle it, because the easiest thing is, and fear is a very contaminating emotion. I could just sense it and then become
part of it.
To ask the question, maybe.
Can you give us like an example on this? Sorry, if is it possible? On the top of your head.
Yeah, well, the easiest thing for the top of my head, and I know is because I always use my son as my biggest testimony and my biggest example, but he lives in the fear land, unfortunately. He gets really fearful about tomorrow, about, lots of things. So when he gets fearful, he gets really frustrated and really angry, and it could be quite he could show that emotion. And the easiest thing for me is to immediately react. Okay, so I don't respond, I react, because
you disagree, I suppose.
Yeah, but I'm also emotionally involved with someone like him, I suppose.
Right, definitely.
Screams at you or shouts at you. I immediately want to react to, possibly in this case, is to make it better.
Of course, yeah.
And sometimes it's not about making it better. Sometimes it's about just listening. And literally just making sure they're heard and saying, okay, I can see you are upset. I can sense you are afraid. And then that's it. Because most of the time when people are afraid, or they don't really, they know that you can't fix it, but they want you to listen to it and acknowledge that you see them. You see
Right.
they're afraid, if that makes sense.
I thank you for sharing that, Alina. While I was asking you the question, it just came to my mind. Our current situation with the pandemic is a big fear in amongst people that I just overlooked, and I was just thinking, you can't really change how a person thinks, right? So if you come across someone that is really afraid about the current situation, do you think you can, I mean, and also it's okay if there are 100 people, 70 or 80 people from them are afraid. So, hey, I'm also going to be afraid. How one person, I mean, I'm not asking you a question, but I'm just saying, how does one person that is optimistic say, you know, you don't need to fear. Life and death is part of, or being born and dying is part of life, you know? So how do you change that into another person? I don't think you can really influence when it is a huge crowd that is drawn to fear.
Well, you can, to some extent. Actually, it depends on what that conversation is. The one thing you have is just, you have to, I always, when I work with people, you can't change the other person unless the other person wants to be changed.
Right. Good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? So
Absolutely.
even in the coaching, I said, how much do you want this? How much do you, how important is success to you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Mm-hmm.
Say less than 8, then I'm not for you, because
Yep.
I cannot, whatever I do for you, unless you want to do it yourself, it's, you know, but the same to go with yours. If a room of people is, all you can do is give them hope. All you can do is stand in your, well, I will say audacious truth. Just because I'm optimistic, I don't have to apologize for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But hey ho, I know, and I'm not asking you to be as optimistic as me. That's definitely not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is there's possibly another way to look at some of these things. And even when we are at most fearful, you know, there are reasons to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
So gratitude is probably the best emotion, that when you stress, when you are fearful, that's what I advise my clients to do. Just be grateful for things that you have, and that will,
you have.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Camelia Trashka writes in saying, you have to take every challenge for an opportunity. This helps you develop and knowing yourself, but that's true from time to time. You have to take pauses to breathe and to enjoy life. So that is reflecting to the part where we were saying being optimistic all the time and saying yes to everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tatiana says, is our mind really impacted by our gut and heart? I am wondering, when we act just based on our mind, we are in illusion and not aware of our heart and gut. Example, just like being in the forest and not noticing the birds on a bench to rest, or on a bench to rest. Sorry. Was that question clear? Or should I read it out
Was
again?
it a question? Was it, I think, was she sort of clarifying that what we were talking before?
Yeah, she was saying, is our mind really impacted by our gut and heart? I'm wondering, when we act just based on our mind, are we in illusion and not aware of our heart and gut? Example, just like being in the forest and not noticing the birds or a bench to rest, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair point. I mean, I think the way I'm sort of reading it is that she's almost, you know, just saying that it is when you are in your mind, which is, I think, what I've stated. It's, you can't access the heart and the gut. I mean, it's very easy. I've been there, you know, and a lot of my clients are still there. So, and then you go into the forest, as she says, and you can't notice because you're so much in your head that you can't.
Yeah, just
Yeah, it's that sort of narrow focus.
narrow focus, right? Did we? Sorry, that Alina, but did we touch upon optimism as we wanted to? I just wanted to know that we have rounded up on that topic.
I think so. I mean, as I
Yeah.
said, it's sort of I mean, the resilience was the very last one, but the resilience is that ability that we have to, you know, recover from setbacks. And I always say, when people need to focus more on the resilience is the speed, because we will all get obstacles. But the question is, are you going to recover from a setback within 5 minutes, within 5 hours, or within 5 days, or within 5 years?
5 months. Yeah, true. So Carmen is saying, and it's inspirational how you share authentically about your son. You are so brave. I will use your practical advice to acknowledge the feeling. This is so powerful. So Carmen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tatiana says, Alina, I learned so much from this podcast. You made me think of so much. Really powerful. Thank you. So Tatiana, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Alina, this was really a fantastic broadcast. I really enjoyed you coming in and with the audience engaging in and taking up those questions, having the patience to answer back as well. So, Sarmuna, as we would say in Romanian.
Thank you.
But Alina, before we any final words of wisdom or something that you would, as a conclusion or takeaway that you would like to give the audience?
No, thank you. I mean, I think it is. It's a long journey, as always with these things, but you have to start with understanding, with curiosity. So if anybody is interested in emotional intelligence, and I will say reach out. Reach out to me, and I'm very happy as always. If anybody wants to hear a little bit more about that model or anything else, I'm very happy to just connect and give. And of course, I will say, as an optimist, I know I can be challenged every day, but say yes and then find a way of doing it, like Richard Branson said. So
Fantastic.
I do have to sometimes be reminded to stop, and I'm doing slightly better. Let's say it's a work in progress.
That's great to hear, and that's a great example for the others as well. So Alina, thank you so much for today. I had a great time with you. I'm really honored that you came on the broadcast, and for everybody that joined us in. And I'm hoping that maybe probably on another topic, I will get you once again on your RAN Alive, and we can hit it off on a broadcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And actually, now that I've sort of conquered that fear of doing this, it will be a pleasure to do it US next time. But no, definitely, I will be to do it again with you.
So my brother Ilan is saying, thank you, Alina, for sharing your knowledge and information about emotional intelligence. While Maria says, when will be another?
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm really touched. So it will be a pleasure. As I do engagement. When you get the questions back, that people are listening actually. And
Right,
engaging.
absolutely. So what I will do, Maria, is I will be in constant contact with Alina and hoping to convince her from her busy schedule to remove that 1 hour of time to be with us on the broadcast for another topic. So Alina, once again, thank you so much, with lots of love, and wishing you a great day ahead, and to the audience as well.
Thank you. And actually, one of the things I could do is, I have built a team. So it's not just me. I'll get you some of my team on this, and then we can keep talking about mind, gut, and heart. And the audience.
Sounds like a fantastic plan.
Fab. Okay. Well,
Lovely, Alina.
Amazing day, and I shall speak to you soon.
You as well, Alina. Take care, and
you too.
Speak to you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, bye,
Ciao.
bye, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.